Good morning, Kasturians, and welcome to yet another video of chapter Changing Cultural Traditions. In the previous video, we have seen Renaissance, the causes of Renaissance, and humanism. In this video, we will discuss the various periodization and the revival of Italian cities, the invention of printing press, and rationalism. So let's start. In the previous videos, we have seen the humanistic meanings, the humanistic way of thinking about art, and how the humanists they amalgamated the study of law with humanitarian feelings. On the basis of these, the humanists they made the periodization of history, and later some scholars also joined them, and according to these the periods they have been divided as follows. That is, the period from 5th to 14th century was termed as the Middle Ages. Between that, from 5th to 9th century, it was the Dark Age, and from 9th to 11th century, according to them, it was the Early Middle Ages, and from 11th to 14th century, they termed it as the Late Middle Ages, and 15th century onwards is considered as the Modern Age according to the humanists and the scholars. The Italian cities they got a revival when Western Europe it was reshaped by the feudal bonding between the Church and Eastern Europe under the Byzantine or the Roman Empire, and at the same time Islam was also creating a common civilization. When we go westwards, Italy was weak and it was fragmented. The ports of the Italian coasts they were revived, and from 14th to 17th century the towns they grew in many European countries, and a distinct urban culture developed in the main cities of Florence, Venice and Rome. And these cities they became centers of art and learning, and the invention of printing press at the same time it made the books and prints available to many people, and a sense of history also developed in Europe. The religious works and the religion it came to be seen as something which each individual should choose for himself, and the church belief was overthrown and overturned by the scientists. It was in 1455 that a major change was brought about by Johannes Gutenberg when he invented the printing press. In fact, the first printing press, and this first printing press it was set up by Caxton in 1477 in Europe, and this invention it increased the volume of books, and it also helped in the spreading of education. The Arabs they contributed well to the field of art and literature. It was in the 14th century that Arabs they translated ancient Greek and Roman texts. They called Plato as Aflatun and Aristotle as Aristu in Arabic. And the noted Muslim writers during this time were Ibn Sina, which is also known as Avicenna in Latin, and Ibn Rushd, who is known as Averroes in Latin, and Ptolemy he wrote in Greek, Almagest on astrology and astronomy. And because of these works, the Muslim writers they were regarded as men of vision and men of wisdom in the Italian world. Now we will see rationalism. The rationalism it developed the ideas among the people, and they abandoned the superstitious beliefs and rituals that prevailed in the entire society, and this paved the way for new inventions which changed the way of life of the people. In this we have the rationalist art. Around 1,000 years after the fall of Rome, the fragments of art they were discovered in the ruins of the ancient Rome, and other deserted cities. And these admirations for the figures of perfectly proportional men and women, they were sculpted so many centuries ago, and artists, they were concerned to be accurate, and it was helped by the work of scientists. And basically it was the bone structures which were studied, and to study these bone structures the artists, they went to the laboratories of medical schools, and the anatomy, geometry, physics, as well as a strong sense of what was beautiful. It gave a new quality to Italian art, which was to be called realism, and which continued till the 19th century. When we see the rationalist literature, the greatest revolution was the mastery of the technology of printing, and for this purpose the Europeans, especially the European traders and diplomats, they became familiar with it during visits to their courts. The knowledge of geometry helped the people to understand perspective, and they also that by noting the changing quality of light, their pictures, they acquired a three-dimensional quality, anatomy, geometry, physics, as well as a strong sense of what was considered to be beautiful. It gave a new quality to Italian art, which came to be known as realism again. So when we see the scientific viewpoint in this, the scientific revolution was the characteristic feature of this era. Not the God, but the nature, the source of all creation, was a revolution in thought, and the people, they became more rational and scientific in their approach towards the life of mankind during Renaissance movement. And the scientists, they used the method of experimentation. The scientific discoveries of Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, and Isaac Newton, these brought about new changes in the world. Copernicus, he asserted that the earth rotates around the sun, and the revolution in science, it reached at its climax or top with Newton's theory of gravitation. The theory of Earth as a part of the sun-centered system was made popular by Kepler's cosmographical mystery. In the field of art, it was Donatello. He made many lifelike statues in 1416, like Vesalius, who was a Belgian professor of medicine. He was the first to dissect the human body. Leonardo da Vinci, all of us know, he had an amazing range of interests from botany and anatomy to mathematics and art, and he painted the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. At the same time, his counterpart, that is Michelangelo Buonarroti, he painted the Sistine Chapel, made the sculpture of Pieta and the dome of St. Peter's Church. But whatever developments have taken place, the new ideal of individuality and citizenship, it excluded the women. Men from aristocratic families, they dominated public life, and they were the decision makers in their families also. A few women, they were intellectually very creative and sensitive about the importance of a humanist education. So these women's writings, they revealed their conviction that they should have economic power, they should have property and education to achieve an identity in a world who is dominated by men. So in this male dominated world, the women, they also started seeking of these types of freedoms and liberties. Then we have the Reformation movement. See, the church, it used to be a very strong social organization. So this church mainly influenced the life of people a lot, and the Reformation movement was a protest movement that took place in the 16th century against the church and the pope. A young German monk called Martin in 1517, Martin Luther, he launched a campaign against the Catholic Church, and he asked his followers to have complete faith in God. For faith alone, it could guide them to the right life and the entry into heaven. So this movement came to be known as the Protestant Reformation, and this movement led to the churches in Germany and Switzerland breaking their connection with the Pope at the Catholic Church. According to Martin Luther, a person did not need priests to establish contact with the God, and the church itself did not escape the impact of these. So the five theses were there, and actually it was a book, the 95 theses. But this Luther, he did not support the radicalism, and the Catholic Church itself did not escape the and among this the most powerful motive which Machiavelli he saw as the incentive for every human action was the self-interest. After this, the counter-reformation movement it took place, and it came into being as a result of reformation, and it has come into the Catholicism, but the Roman Catholic did not pay heed to it. However, according to this movement, the church tried to reform itself, and some of its objectionable practices were redefined. And for instance, when we take the appointment of bishops on the basis of their ability was practiced, and it came into existence. After going through all this, we can say the ultimate result of Renaissance was that a change that did happen in this period was that gradually the private and public spheres of life they began to become separated. And the public sphere, it meant the area of government and of formal religion. The private sphere, it included the family and the persons or the personal religion. The individual had a private as well as a public role. He was not simply a member of one of the three orders. In fact, he was also a person in his own right, and an artist was not just a member of a guild. And he was known to do for himself. In the 18th century, the sense of individuals, they were expressed in different form, in a political form, in the belief that all individuals they had equal political rights. Another development that took place was the different regions of Europe, they started to have their separate senses of identity. Also, this sense of identity was based on the language of the people. That's all from my side. Thank you and have a nice day.